Wisconsin's Department of Justice joining a multi-state coalition to fight back on a federal rollback on the limits for so-called forever chemicals in drinking water. The group is opposing an EPA plan that would drop national limits on 4 types of PFAS, meaning public water systems would no longer have to test for those chemicals, report levels, or treat water to remove them. Attorney General Josh Kaul calls the Trump administration's move unlawful and dangerous, pointing to studies that link PFAS exposure to cancer, high cholesterol, pregnancy complications, and immune problems. The coalition argues federal law bars EPA from backsliding on drinking water protections. It's urging the agency to keep the 2024 PFAS rule in place to protect public health.